This. Guys, so I'm going to chat to you about where we are currently going with what we call the Buffalo Company, what we have achieved, what pitfalls there are, what we still need to achieve, and give you some background of where we think we should be going. So you've met our presenters today, and you may have heard about what we call the SOP. A SOP is a standard operating procedure. It's a document or sort of a contract, if you want to, that we have negotiated with state to go according to. So there's a bunch of things stating how we operate and exchange information, who's allowed to do what, who are authorized to do things and who's not, and how do we go about all these things. So the role players of this SOP is myself, WRSA, Richard, Chris is the developer, Richard Burrows helping with some of the logistics and writing the most eloquent emails, convincing Dalrad to accept our SOPs. So Dalrad, we've got Dr. Lynn-Marie de Klerk-Levest. She is doing a lot of TB research in Skakuza. Dr. Bronkhorst, who's our Director of Disease Control, and Dr. Marja. Then I've consulted with a lot of our Buffalo owners who are also vets, because they've also got a unique view on these things. Dewald, Marnie, Hendrik, and Louis. Then we've got the BCDC, which is the Buffalo Controlled Diseases Committee, and onderstepoort Dr. Johan Stel. You've probably seen some postmortems done by him, Dr. Gary Mao and Dr. Adel. So from an academic faculty point of view, those were the role players in this. So what do we want to achieve? What do we try and get to with this SOP? First of all, we want to streamline the Buffalo farm registration. I had one of my colleagues tell me, we can get all the data together over the last few years. We can go to Livio and we can go to all these things. In 2 weeks, we can actually have a very good insight into what's going on into the buffalo industry. And I asked my colleague, you know what, this sounds brilliant, we're going to get all the stats together. Have you tried to register a buffalo farm in under 3 months? No, so it's not going to happen from state side. We can't go to state and shake them about like a redhead stepchild and tell them to produce results. It's not going to happen. Okay, so we're sort of in a failed state thing where the guys are trying to pick up things which they're struggling to. And I'll get into that a bit later. So one of the things we focused on is to get your farm registered, get that process sorted out. Then we approached the state to get an authorized private vet. So what is an authorized private vet? Well, that's the state allowing us private vets to come to your farm and certify TB results. And there's implications with regards to that. And I'll tell you where we are with that specific thing. The next thing we want to look at in this SOP is the movement of buffalo. As we all know, and I've had some clients sitting here, this week was a mess with certain arrangements, as the farm manager didn't communicate with the state vet that we're loading buffalo and we couldn't seal, and then they were ready to seal and then we couldn't find them and get hold of them because of load shedding. So some of these things I've come to know as our private vets' faults in poor communication. Some of them are the state vets' problems with poor communication. And then we sit with load shedding. So even if both are trying to communicate, we can't get it done. So we want to try and get this movement sorted electronically and also hand that authority to a private vet or a specific individual. Then we would like to get to the point eventually where we sort of privatize the whole process and we as private vets, authorized private vets, can oversee the whole movement process and then report that simply to state. So in the years coming, we'd like to get to the point where we are in full control of what goes on with buffalo. So what can an authorized private vet do? Well, first of all, they can certify the TB results. So you can have a person there, and I'd like to point this out. Please guys, the private vet is at this stage an extension of state function. He is not allowed to mobilize. So there is a two-vet system, and we can get to the question and answers of why it's a two-vet system later. But remember, this is a person performing the function of state. They can handle all the sampling and submissions, and I'm pretty sure all of you have had a run in with trying to change a microchip number, which the digit's been wrong, the farm name has been written incorrectly on the reports, and our lovely people in the Free State and Northern Cape are very, very meticulous finders of these little errors, and they prevent our movements. Okay, so all those submissions will be handled. One of the other advantages is we can test any day of the week. Because it's a private vet, you can test on a Wednesday, Saturday, you can do a Thursday, Sunday if you really, really like to do that. But the point of the thing is we are not bound from a normal 8 to, was it 2 o'clock? I think state workshop 2 o'clock. So we're not bound by that. We can start at 6 o'clock, the chopper gets there in the summer, we all know you can even start maybe 5:30. These type of arrangements will be able to be made. And then we can load and unload buffalo. You all know how many times we have broken seals here in Limpopo ourselves, just because simply the state vet doesn't come and the welfare of the animals become a problem. Okay, so all those things can be arranged, and hopefully we will be also able to issue Red Cross permits for the movement of samples from Limpopo to the laboratories, and also for the loading of the buffalo. So all these things completely electronic, completely in the control of an authorized private vet. Okay, so what is the criteria for authorized private vet? So one of the things and one of the long discussions we had is, who do we want to present as vets doing the work? So first of all, we decided that these guys need to do a CPD course. A CPD is a continuous professional development course, and we went and we got that course approved by DALRAD. So our national veterinary body has approved the course, the South African Veterinary Council approved the course, and it was held in end of April, somewhere there, end of March. I will get to that in a minute. Then you have to have a log. So the log is a letter of good standing from council. So there must be no investigations against you for fraud, for having welfare issues, you've committed some sort of thing, and council is now investigating you. So you should have a clean track record. Okay? Then last thing, second last is you have to have a referral letter from the state vet. So in the area you wish to work, you'll have to go to your state vet as a private vet and go and ask for a letter that testifies to the fact that you have testing experience of buffalo. And then the last hurdle, there's some smaller details as well, but it's not on here. But the last thing is you have to be accepted by DALRAD. So DALRAD may have a little red book there, or black book maybe, and they've written your name down and they can block you. Because at the end of the day, DALRAD and the state remains responsible and liable for the test results. So if you as an authorized private vet makes a bugger up, the state will stand, this will pass on. It's English for that. Okay, in case the state will stand halfway. Okay, take responsibility. Well, I'm looking for better expression of that. Any case, so these are the guys. We had our CPD training course. Like Richard said, we had 18 state vets, and WRSN, and thank you Richard, we scrambled to get funds from the Buffalo Company, Monsumi Darts, my company, VTech, Chiron, these guys are all sponsored. Not a single state vet paid. Now we can get into arguments of why they should maybe pay, but they didn't. We wanted to extend the olive branch and say, come to the course, let's talk about the industry going forward. Now I can tell you it's much easier standing here in front of 100 people than trying to stand in front of Louis Freef that wants to throw everyone with a mug of coffee. And there were some very heated debates about the state and their failure. And then the state got up and said, but guys, the problem is not our willingness to help. This is really important. It's not the state's willingness to help. The MEC, the minister, has granted them 2,000 kilometers to travel per month, doing buffalo, tannery export certification, etc. There is no way a state vet can travel with 2,000 kilometers a month allowance. And they may not get the vehicle before 7 o'clock. Something ridiculous like that, for them to be able to serve us. So even though, and I'm not talking about all state vets, there's always the exception that's not going to do his work even if he's got 20,000 kilometers. The willing ones can't do their work. We've had a lady there, just to give you some background, that has got a rabies outbreak in her area. They requested fridges for vaccines, and the rabies vaccine is cheap, so it's not an issue. They've been denied. 4 children died. Okay, so we are sitting with a failed state. We can either go into them and again make it their problem, or we can try and get together. In any case, this was the CPD course. So by Sunday we were talking along the same direction. We started on the Thursday afternoon, and people are actually saying, listen, we can solve this. And we've got Tavi Singh, Veronica, and I can't remember the third provincial director, the deputy directors. All 3 deputy directors were there, and in agreement that once we've got final certification of sign-off, that we can carry on with the electronic system, and they will support it. Okay. So the first step is that application for the Buffalo Farm registration, and some of you guys have already registered online. And what does that entail? So the application starts with what you all know. You owner, you're going to register on the WRSA portal, and this is completely, we've done the data, the programming and the development. Your local state vet will be able to see and sign off your application. It gets sent to your provincial executive officer. And when the final person signs off, this goes to Delroad. So this whole process, what we've done is we've absolutely changed nothing in what would happen in a normal day-to-day. We've just streamlined the administration for them. So they are still in complete control of signing everything, but it's completely streamlined. There's no 10 emails forwards and backwards, and we can follow the process. So just there's your login. You've got your farm that you've selected with a little, you can see here there's a little buffalo camp here, the light turquoise blue, and then there's a yellow boma. So we've gone to the lengths of capturing this data very accurately and reporting that upon your application. You've seen this page earlier by Richard. You can click on your buffalo registration. It will prompt you to remind you, please get the correct forms. One of the big problems and frustrations with state vets is they're not receiving the correct forms. The names are incorrect and all these sorts of things. So we're going to try from the WRSA side to make sure what you submit at least is correct before we extend that to the state vets. Just a quick one. This is where you select your farm, the wildlife block, your BOMAS. It calculates the size of your hectares, the number of buffalo you can enter, is it disease-free, is it precise, is it estimate, all these sorts of things are taken into account. On this side is what the state sees. The state sees that there's an application from Strangers Rest, it's in the Waterberg district, Tabazimbi. So we have gone and loaded all 18 state vets that was at the CPD course, and they have now access to the system. And in that district where they operate, they will receive the applications. We've gone further on, and on their request, we want to build an interface where they can actually just send you a WhatsApp via the system saying, listen, please, we need more supporting documents, etc. And it's completely traced. Your other supporting documents then will also be listed for them to view, and they can go and approve and deny. Okay. So the second part, it's not section 2. The second part is how does the authorized vet look? What are we doing? We're doing testing, and this is the thing where we want to streamline things. Submit the correct samples, have the correct stuff ready, because we know that there's a big day and there's a lot of people involved. Okay, so I've gone to the point of creating a very simple Google sheet. Now you may ask, why do I create a Google Sheet? We've got all this WRSA funds to maybe develop some nice looking WRSA programs and all these sorts of things. Well, one of the problems we face is we cannot go as the WRSA, the Buffalo company, or anyone into the ARC AVI and go tell them, listen, please give us access to your computers, we need to install software. It will not happen with state. They're not going to allow us to put software onto their systems which is not validated by their internal IT departments and check that we're not actually stealing data or whatever. However, all computers do run Chrome or Internet Explorer, so they can access Google Sheets. Okay, so this is a sheet we've designed. This is the summary page. I'll show you a bit maybe later how it works and it gets all the stuff together. But what is extremely important to notice, although this looks like a normal Excel sheet, Google Sheet, there's an application program interface. It's an API. So what we can do with an API is we can actually, from the WRSA software, create this Google Sheet very, very, very specifically for each individual testing scenario. So we can see there's a WRSA1 reference. We can see the vendor, the sender is the private vet. We have a person responsible for the account, the owner, state vet, authorized vet. So all the data and all the sharing and viewing access is managed for these people. So the person, the private vet, you as the owner can view this data. But it can also be read by the system very simply at the time of when you need to upload your data. It sends stuff through to the OVI. We can capture your reference numbers and we can actually see your account is in good standing, etc., etc. So that's the point where we want to go, because Laura and the guys from the OVI and Ipots, Livio, and Ben Mans have already said they are willing to work with this. We'll just need to see exactly where we meet. So the next sort of tab on this is your TB results. And you guys, I just received the email yesterday. Richard will know about this. We'll not say who the vet is, but all the Buffalo movements has been stopped due to the fact that they simply didn't take accurate TB readings. And it might seem petty that you don't take accurate or that the state vet is full of nonsense, but you cannot, in the life of you, have just 15.0, 14.0, 13 or whatever, and no decimal places. The calipers are accurate enough and you have to report those decimal places. And this is where the CPD and the training becomes important, is to write these things down correctly. So what we have done is we have written all these things that we double check microchips, we interpret the bovine changes, we interpret the avian changes, and we do the comparative analysis. And then we even go as far as suggesting a final interpretation. Okay. The next thing we've done is we've created the OVI submission form electronically. So guys, remember this page, all the data captured here is then transferred here. So on the OVI sheet, your name is correct, your farm name is correct, your location is correct, everything is sorted out, because we don't want to phone up the OVI or your state vet, because you're not allowed to speak to the OVI. You have to ask your private vet, and then the private vet sends it to the state vet, and then the state vet says it's okay. And by the time the results has changed, we've lost another 2 weeks. And we all know buffalo standing on Loma is roughly about 80 to 100 rand per day to feed. The cost implications of $1,500 per buffalo lost because of a typo or incorrect data. So the administration part is where things become important. We also have a little farm section. Farm management section is where you've got access to this data, and as the guys are reading buffalo, putting them down, writing microchips down, you have your own little section. You can put in your spread, your bosses, your SEIs, and have that captured to the system later on. So it's just a nice streamlined thing, and you should see this Google Sheet as the clipboard of the field. Now the question comes in, are you going to run there around with your phone? Please don't. Because the next thing you're going to know, you're going to smash that phone in your car door, you're going to wash your hands at the crib, and it falls into the old way of having a pen and paper. Remains the most reliable thing. But once you get home, you all can put your data into one single sheet and report it. Okay, so what's next is we've now got our test results back. Livio has lived up to the 3 days of testing and 3 days of reporting. It's day 6. You've received your FMD. Dr. Potts is working his butt off to get us down from 3 weeks of waiting for brucellosis to 10 days. And Ben Munns has reported on the corridor. So everything's negative. And now you start applying for moving that quarantine buffalo of 20, and you want to send 5 to the Northern Cape or Free State, 10, and another 5 maybe to the Eastern Cape. And this is the section where we want to come and start trying to do the interprovincial authorization. First we will deal with the application and make sure the application filed is correct. So a lot of times it doesn't contain all the documents you need, so you'll file the correct data, have the correct farm names, the correct dates, TB results, signed, everything administratively sorted out. Then we would like to load at convenient times. As we all know, it is not always possible to load before 8 or seal a truck before 9 because of the availability of technicians. But what if we can load from 5 to 7 and have your private net seal it at 7, and you get into the Eastern Cape and it's 10 o'clock at night and the guy's waiting and driving in with the truck, and you can offload and not have animals necessarily stand on vehicles. So this is the possibility, is the convenient times, because it might also be more convenient on a Saturday, which is currently not happening. And we've got a lot of farmers who do have buffalo, but they've also got jobs in the city, and a Saturday would be a nice convenient time. Okay. Once they're sealed, we issue an electronic Red Cross permit. At this stage, we all have written out Red Cross permits. Do you ever think that's getting filed? It's getting reported? There's no ways the state knows about buffalo moving everywhere. There's just no ways. I do not think that that paper system is even up to date in months' times. So this is immediate per second. The second it's sealed, everyone knows. The farmer, the sending, the receiver, the state vets, local, both local, provincial, receiving and sending. So that's just nice. Once we go electronic, this data and things are available immediately. If someone pulls you off next to the road, here's your thing, and it can be checked and verified. We can get later on to should we be doing all this stuff to move buffalo, and we can discuss that maybe. Okay. So one of the things is, just on the last point, and this is the most important thing, is why can't we just carry on? And one of the reasons is, and maybe it's not a real solid reason, and maybe it's been taken too far, is at the end of the day, DALRAD reports to the OIE or HUA, the new name, it's the international body. They report the FMDs, they report all these things, and there are certain rules and regulations in there that tells them you have to tell us where your buffalo are, how many buffalo have you tested. So once we start all this and gather all this data, the transparency towards state makes it viable. So state cannot lose transparency, and that's what we need to maintain. So that's the only way we will be able to carry on with this process, is to have state sort of in control of the transparency and what's happening with the buffalo industry. Because then the international bodies looking at us are satisfied, and our country is not closed for the export of FMD or corridor disease, which in any case they think we have. So where are we with this SOP? Well, we had a meeting with DALRAD, Dr. Marja Broncos, as you know, and we sought for approval for the buffalo CPD course. And we've got it. It's approved. We've got that one sorted. Then there was a meeting between MINTEC. MINTEC is the ministerial meeting between the provinces, where the directors of all the provinces, statehoods get together for the SOP, where comments and approval must be gained. And we had some opposition for for a very brief moment, and then it was overruled by our chief state veterinary director, what's his name again? Dr. Molisani. So Dr. Molisani basically said our SOP is not even going out to further comments to the provinces, it will be piloted. So we are in the process of sorting out those last things. We have verbal approval then from Mintech that they are happy with the SOP, the authorized vet program. And the last thing is, which we haven't really covered, we've covered a lot of how we look at vets and all these sorts of things, and we still need to cover something on what if something's positive, how do we report it to state, who do we report, and those are the final documents that was submitted about 2 weeks ago. So we're just waiting for them to sign off the last approval, and then our pilot phase is approved. Then we are going ahead. Our pilot phase so far has been approved for the acceptance of all the provinces. So all provinces know that the pilot phase is happening, but the authorized private vets will most likely only operate for the first year in Limpopo. Okay, so we'll get to what have we done then for the rest of the country, we'll get to that now. But for the authorized vet private program, the pilot phase is hopefully going forward in Limpopo very, very soon. And we've identified about 4 or 5 vets which we think meet our criteria and will be able to service the clients in a meaningful way. So once it's signed off, we will get those 5 guys approved, run them with them for a month or 3, and then maybe add up to the potential of, I think, 25 people attending that CPD course. Okay, so what have we ticked? So you might not find this, let me see if I can quickly get this one document for you. We have gone to the length of sorting out some of the problems which we've seen with OVI. So I've gone to Laura, we've gone to, I think Libya, you guys have, Ben Muntz have got, and we literally went to these guys and gave them barcode scanners, because part of the problem is the typing up of all these reports, continuously reports. Let's just see here. So this is an actual document, this is an actual submission. Or copy of one at least. Okay. So these are the results. You can see we've tested a few buffalo, we've made some comments, some were removed from auction. There's interpretations. This is where I want to get. Okay. I just want to show you this section. So we've gone ahead, and when you submit your OVI application form, we have chronologically put your buffalo microchips there for them to scan, because it's a 15-digit microchip, and the people are tired, they're normal human beings, and they might get this wrong. With a barcode scanner, it's very unlikely, maybe 1 in a million digit they might get wrong, even less. So all these barcodes get submitted based on what you're scanning. Now you may ask, but what if I read it wrong here, because it's taken from the TV10 sheet? Well, all the microchip scanners currently out there, or maybe most of them, actually have Bluetooth capabilities, and you can scan that microchip directly to your phone. So what we have tried to do is to remove human error. Because the moment we remove human error, I can save you a week or 2 of boba time, because then we don't have to fix it. We also don't have to pay the penalty for having it fixed at the OVI. So, and in principle, they have agreed to also try and report electronically. So one of the things we would like to do is we go back to our OVI form. Sorry about that. If we go back to our OVI form, is to have you sign off here, or put in a little tick box or something to say, please report the data to the Buffalo Company. And then we can help with all those things and have that reports available immediately so we can process your applications in advance. Okay, so another thing is we are in talks with corridor disease, but we've heard that it might not be likely, but we are looking at price reductions. So corridor testing is currently 2,100 a test. It's a PCR test, and we have approached the guys to say, listen, this for PCR test, this is just a ridiculous amount of money. So currently, the turnover generated from the PCR tests in corridors around 18 million a year, and if our talks go through, we might save the industry roughly about 7.5 million. So that's one of the things we are busy with. We don't know if it's going to come off, but we are working at that. We've discussed the Google Sheet, the application generation, making errors less, and then we've done the farm registration on the portal. So the next thing is to go on and get the last developments done and get the guys actually going to test your buffalo at convenient times, submit correct data, get the data back, get the labs more efficient, and get your buffalo moving. I've calculated this, if we get everything done, if we check every little box, efficiencies, correct submissions, correct applications for movements, then this is maybe a high goal, but I think if we get everything right, we can move buffalo from darting the day 0 to loading onto the truck by day 12. And I think if we can save the money by not having 60-day, 90-day quarantines and BOMA feedings, we can actually inject some more profitability into the system. So that's what we're aiming at. That's what we want to get at. Any questions, guys? Anything, Richard, you, MC? Okay, I think we're probably going to have